Hi, my name is James Shepard, and this is the Merchant Sales Tech Tip. Today we're talking about processor agnostic compliant surcharging. This is a big deal. So in the past, there's been several companies that have kind of dominated the compliant surcharging conversation, and compliant surcharging is actually very popular, especially with card not present merchants, home service providers, large ticket, type situations where they don't want to pay a high cost of processing when somebody uses their credit card, but they also want to give their customers a break when they use their debit card, because on a $1,000 transaction, running a regulated debit card, there's not a lot of cost. So for those of you that don't know, compliant surcharging means that you can only add a fee when it is a credit card transaction, not a debit card transaction. So this is different from dual pricing, where we have a cash price and a card price, and the card price is for all cards. This is compliant surcharging under the Visa rules, which is where you add a fee not more than 4%, and actually they're coming out with a not more than 3% ruling very shortly here, but not more than 3% on credit cards only, no signature debit, no PIN debit, and no prepaid cards. So let's see what that looks like. This is brought to you by Valor Paytech, and we're starting in the back end here for a second because I just want to show you what this actually looks like. So if you go to edit parameters on the terminal that I'm looking at here and you scroll down, you're going to see that if we go down here to the home screen and bin, I have selected the bin-based surcharge. Now, we have different ones. We have the default, which is traditional. We have dual pricing and bin-based surcharging. I'm choosing bin-based surcharging, and this change, I already pushed it to the terminal, which is super easy to do from the cloud, which I covered in a previous merchant sales tech tip. So now let's go over to the terminal and see what compliant surcharging really looks like. So we have two cards that we're going to run through the terminal. We're going to run a credit card, and then we're going to run a debit card and take a look at how bin-based surcharging works, where it looks up the bin number on the card to see if it's a debit card or if it's a credit card, and then it only applies the surcharge on credit. Let's go. So we're going to start by entering a $1 transaction. Hit enter, and you can see here that we have a surcharge amount, but it clearly shows us that if it's a credit card we're about to enter, it's going to be $1.04. If it's a debit card we're about to enter, it's only going to be $1. So let's check it out. So now it's going to give me a prompt because this is a credit card. It recognized that it was a credit card, and it says the sale amount is $1.04 because we have the 4% surcharge. Now if I click sign it and click OK, it's going to run it for $1.04. What happens if we try to run a debit card in the same way? Well, we're going to put in $1. Hit enter, tell us the same information, credit versus debit price, click OK. I'm going to insert my debit card. In this case, the terminal recognizes that it is a debit card, but it asks us if we want to run it as credit or debit. Now, this will be the real test of the application to see how good the bin lookup is. So when you see credit versus debit, what they mean is, do you want to run it as PIN debit or signature debit? We've all seen this prompt many times as consumers. I'm going to select 1. And as you can see, even though I selected 1 that I want to run my debit card as credit, it still does not apply the 4% surcharge. Why? Because it recognizes this is a debit card and it would not be compliant to charge that debit card with a surcharge. Okay. Now, again, we sign it, hit enter. It's only going to charge us $1 because we used our debit card. Now, let me explain to you why this is such a big deal. I predicted this probably 3 years ago that in the future, both cash discounting, dual pricing, surcharging, whatever it's going to be, these would all be technology solutions, not processor solutions. In other words, when you look at surcharging, that landscape has been dominated by several players that are processing companies that have said, we as processing companies are making compliant surcharging available. Well, now any processor can say, well, we have the Valor terminal suite or the virtual terminal or whatever we're going to use from Valor and their omni-channel solution, and we have compliant surcharging. Now, are there still some things that need to be done? Of course, there's notifications that need to be done. A lot of that's actually changing with the new ruling coming out from Visa, which I'll talk more about in other content. But now the hardest part, which is being able to do the bin lookup to see if it's a debit or credit card and whether or not you're allowed to add the surcharge, Valor now does that for you, and that works for any processor. It is processor agnostic. Processor agnostic compliant surcharging is here, and you saw it first on the Merchant Sales Tech Tip. Head over to ValorPaytech.com. That's ValorPaytech.com. ValorPaytech.com to learn more about our sponsor.